Then, its casing opened. The springs snapped, and the nose cone was pushed out of the way. A ball with 4 antennae emerged to go it alone in the darkness of space. And a radio began to send a signal back to Earth. Humanity had entered the space age.
In response to the launch of Sputnik and in an effort to form an organization that could meet the needs of America's space program, President Eisenhower morphed the organization NACA, National Advisory Committee of Aeronautics, into NASA. Soon after, T. Keith Glennon became the first administrator of NASA. However, before his role in NASA, he was the president on leave at the Case Institute of Technology and the director of the U.S. Navy Underwater Sound Laboratory and a member of the Columbia Division of War Research in 1942, among numerous other achievements.
Members of the NACA staff, this is my first opportunity to greet you as Deputy Administrator of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. It is a very great pleasure to introduce the Administrator of NASA, Dr. T. Keith Glennon.
Thank you, Hugh. I'm sure you realize that events have been moving so swiftly here in Washington that I haven't yet been able to visit NACA's research centers and field stations. This I plan to do at the earliest opportunity. But meantime, I very much want to talk with you about our future. First, let me say that I have long been familiar with NACA's traditions and accomplishments. One of the real incentives underlying my acceptance of this job as NASA's first administrator was the knowledge that NACA would be the first and most substantial unit to be absorbed into NASA.
On and around the time of the founding of NASA, many scientific advances were made, such as the first nuclear reactor, to the first successful space launch on January 31st of 1958 when we launched a satellite. Then yet another leap forward in aeronautics when transatlantic air travel begins on October 4th of 1958. Later on that year, ultrasonic scanning was developed, and 11 years after this, NASA put the first man on the moon using Apollo 11. Many years later, in the year of 1990, NASA launched the Hubble Space Telescope, which had the means to observe near-ultraviolet, visible, and near-infrared rays. Due to its location outside of Earth's atmosphere, it could take extremely high-resolution images with almost no background light. 8 years later, in 1998, NASA launched the first component that was to become the International Space Station. 5 years later, NASA launched the Mars rover into space to begin its long journeys to Mars.
When people look at it, it looks crazy. That's a very natural thing. Sometimes when we look at it, it looks crazy. It is the result of reasoned engineering thought, but it still looks crazy. From the top of the atmosphere down to the surface, it takes us 7 minutes. It takes 14 minutes or so for the signal from the spacecraft to make it to Earth. That's how far Mars is away from us. So when we first get word that we've touched the top of the atmosphere, the vehicle has been alive or dead on the surface for at least 7 minutes.